Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
Gino and I had another argument this morning, and I haven't seen him for hours. It's just that our conversation escalated so fast. I don't know what to say. I've never seen him like this.
So I'm a little concerned for their pattern at this point. If I were to describe it, it would be that for either one of them to listen and take time with the other person is supposed to explode. In order for Gino to pay attention to Jasmine, she has to explode. In order for Jasmine to pay attention to Gino, he has to explode. We haven't seen him explode yet on camera. We saw him explode last week on the episode. It was just this morning in this timeline. And whereas each of them have totally valid, legitimate requests and complaints and issues that they want to bring up, and they shouldn't have to explode to be heard. So on one hand, I'm worried. On the other hand, I am a little optimistic, maybe, that they are just getting into the rhythm. Sometimes this can happen when a relationship starts, or when it starts to get serious, or when you move in together. There is a transition period where you're getting used to how to account for the other person's feelings, and also how to assert yourself and do so carefully. So I see that kind of developing, because Jasmine's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have laid into him about the Legoland thing. And so maybe there's some adjustments, hopefully, for their sake.
It started because I received a message threatening to publish the naked pictures of me that Gino sent.
Right. And of course, the majority of what happened earlier in the day, or just previous to this, was that Gino was completely in denial of the effect that his actions had had on Jasmine, and he was just saying, well, just get another job. It'll be no big deal. Do you want to just change your eyelashes or something? And so the way I depicted their previous conflict doesn't really summarize the whole thing.
But he didn't understand that it's a big deal for me. It made me very angry. So I took his phone to see his emails. And I just cut him another line about a trip with his ex-girlfriend. And Gino just exploded.
So is it possible that he was lying? Yes, he has demonstrated he is capable of lying very easily and often. The lies about the text and the photograph, he was lying straight up to her face a number of times, even though he should have known that the person in question could produce proof of the fact that he had texted her, sent her a photo of Jasmine nude. Anyway, so is he capable of lying about having gone on a trip with his partner while he was with a previous partner? Yes. Would he lie about that is the thing. Why would he lie about that? And so I hope that Jasmine can modulate that a little bit and say, well, maybe he didn't lie. Maybe he literally just did forget, or he just didn't think it was relevant. And also, why is Jasmine putting him in that position? We don't know. The dynamics in this relationship are pretty complicated, but we use this as a jumping off point. If you have jealousy issues, if you're preoccupied attachment, if you're hypervigilant about abandonment, and you start peppering your partner with a bunch of questions, you have to wonder, is that fair? So with Jasmine, it sounds like there was a previous moment where she was peppering him with questions about this previous partner. What did you do with her? How many trips did you go on with her? Where did you go? I mean, the fact that she could find an email of some indication of a trip that happened 6, 7, 8 years ago where he went to Legoland with his partner while he was with her, years before he even met Jasmine. The fact that she could see that, say, you went to Legoland, and instantly know, you never told me. You only told me about this trip and that trip. That's odd, right? I mean, just think about for yourself with your partner's previous partner. Do you know every trip that they went on? Do you know instantly, like, whether or not that was told to you or not? And so that indicates a pattern of control, jealousy, peppering of questions. I would argue invasive questions. Now, maybe Gino's cool with it, but at the very least, Jasmine should consider that, maybe he's not lying. Maybe he did just forget. Or maybe he didn't spend that much time thinking about it. That would be my suspicion, is that when she was peppering him, like, where'd you go? He was like, well, we went here and here, and he just didn't think to really try to dig deep because he didn't think it was important. And also he probably just wasn't comfortable being interrogated like that. Now, I understand where Jasmine is coming from. She's been traumatized by lies before Gino and now with Gino. So and this is why when essentially they're recovering from a form of infidelity in a sense. It's a massive trust violation. The Ginos of the world, and I work with couples like this, what I do with the Ginos of the world is I will actually, if I detect that this is needed, I will have a private conversation with them where I pepper them with questions, and I'm like, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me, because there are things that you might be asked in the future that if you lie or obscure and then later have to reveal the truth, it can completely set us back, miles and miles. So, because people like Gino and others, once they demonstrate they're capable of lying, it indicates that they have a knee-jerk reaction often to lying. There are various different reasons for that. The internet will usually think you're evil or you're a psychopath or a narcissist, but usually it's because of insecurities or desperation of retaining attachments, or you were punished too frequently as a child for things you did or didn't do. And so you just have this very quick reaction of lying, which of course is not functional or helpful or mature or, compassionate. But anyway, but when people have those patterns, it's hard to break. And so what I will do is with the Jasmine's not in the room, I will go with the Ginos and I'll be like, okay, let's talk about all the things that she might want to know about, all the things she might ask about. And what I'll also say to the Ginos is it's okay to have privacy. It's okay to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about the sexual positions I went through with my previous partner. That's between me and that person, and I don't think it's reasonable that I have to answer those questions. That's okay. But that's another thing that I will pepper them with. Like, she might ask this, what do you think? Do you want to answer that question? Do you feel comfortable answering that question? If not, don't lie. Here's what you say. Instead of lying, there's another thing to say. But anyway, so what is happening is that Gino is making a mistake around having not told her the full truth, which could be interpreted as a lie to Jasmine, which is 100% triggering, which makes total sense. We get thrown back into fighting and distrust. So without guidance, I don't know how well they're going to do with this.
Even though I'm myself suffering for all the things he did, I know that he's in pain. And it made me feel bad. Even when he deserved it, it really made me feel very miserable.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective, even when I know he deserves it. I don't know if he deserves to feel miserable about not having mentioned that he went to Legoland 7 years ago with a previous partner. I don't know if that's what... Now, does he deserve it on the basis that he's lied about something in a much more significant way in the past, and that it triggered Jasmine, and these are just the ongoing ripple effects of that terrible action that he took? You could argue that, but I don't know if he deserves it. But she is feeling compassion for him, and which is a good sign, because oftentimes when we're in fights with our partners, and particularly when we're talking with our friends, there's this perspective of, you got to stand your ground. You got to like let him have it. And that is not a conducive philosophy for ongoing satisfactory marriages or relationships. Sticking it to the other person or winning the fight is not the perspective that you should be having. What you should be having is compassion. And what people will say is, well, you're just going to get walked all over. You're just going to be like a doormat. You can't let him get away with that. And yeah, but that doesn't mean you can't have compassion. It doesn't mean that you throw love out the door in the process. To retain a relationship, you have to exhibit love and compassion while being assertive at the same time. So she is doing that right now, which is conducive to a relationship and gives me hope for their future.
It's peaceful, right?
Yeah. That's what I need, is peace.
That's it.
Okay.
So it's going pretty well so far. In this show, we have a lot of opportunities to analyze the openers that individuals will exhibit to conflict. So Jasmine is approaching Gino. All of us in relationships have these moments where we are the one that's approaching and saying, okay, let's talk about it. And there are what John Gottman and colleagues will call soft openings or constructive openings, meaning the opener to a tense conversation. How do you open it up? And obviously there are things you have to do throughout the discussion, but oftentimes it's set by the tone of the opener. If she walked up and said, "What are you doing over here? You know, are you just gonna ignore me? Are you just gonna like not even talk to me? Or what, are we breaking up right now?" That's also an opener. Obviously it's not as constructive as what Jasmine did.
All I can say is I can understand that you're upset, but I was trying to have a good conversation with you, and I just feel like I'm being attacked over.
So good. I understand why you would be upset. He could have elaborated on that quite a bit. That would have helped. Like, I understand that, you know, it's a good thing to say, but it's all in the elaboration, people. You know, this is probably top 10 of the things that I would hope that you would learn, is just saying you're sorry is a great opener to an elaboration. I'm sorry because this, I'm sorry because that, I'm sorry that it made you feel this way, I'm sorry, you know. For him, I could see how you would be upset because I have lied to you. And when you came across that email and it showed that I was on a trip with my former partner that I hadn't told you about, it looked like a lie. I totally get why that would distress you and freak you out. I get that. I didn't lie to you. I didn't withhold it from you, but I get where you're coming from. You know, it's in the elaboration, people. So he, you know, said the beginning, which is, you know, 5-10% there, and maybe Jasmine will receive that anyway. So then he says, but I felt attacked, and that's good. So he's, you know, he's talking calmly, and he's talking how he feels. So this is good.
And over. Just getting on my nerves.
He's saying it's just getting on my nerves, which I think was what I was observing as well, that he has had a number of things happen to him where he feels like he was treated unfairly. He's had situations where I think he feels like he's being treated fairly. But we remember earlier on in the season all the other kinds of conversations, and eventually he can't control his upsetness, and he walks off and throws down the chair. Which, by the way, I never recommend. You can certainly walk away, but to throw down a chair, it introduces this notion of violence and breaking things, which you do not want to have in your relationship.
I don't know. Well, I wanted you to suffer same as I've been suffering. You have to understand that you lied a few times, and then now I'm like doubting everything you said.
Okay, so it's good that she can admit that. I wanted you to suffer as much as I have been suffering, which is true for a lot of us. Maybe all of us will do that. But not very many people will admit that. So it's good that she can admit that. I hope that she would say, well, that's not a good philosophy to live by. Like when I'm suffering, I'm going to make you suffer just as much as me. It's not the answer. I'm guessing that comes from her relational traumas, or she was modeled that or something. Because of course, when you're suffering and you want to stop the suffering, you want to, have the other person understand your suffering such that it provokes their empathy and compassion for you so that they will stop the suffering. You don't have to, this notion of, because you hurt me, I have to make you hurt so that you know how I feel, is really trying to strong arm empathy. If you really want someone to understand how you feel, you can download that by expressing to them how vulnerable and fragile you are, as we all are. Anyway, so she said that, and then she says, because you have lied to me, I doubt everything that you said. And, it's another rational thing to say.
For 9 months, I remember when I used to cry because we wanted so badly, to be together, to eat together. I've been in my lockdown, and I used to call you. And you said, everything is gonna be fine, you have me, you're not alone. I really felt that.
So I'm not sure where she's going with this, but I think what she's talking about is I'm sad and I miss the old Gino or something, or I had so many aspirations and hopes for our relationship that don't seem to be working out. I don't know. But either way, she's crying, she's exhibiting vulnerability, which is much more functional and much more healthy and constructive than getting angry. So I'm guessing that will help.
You felt
that you were with me, that you were gonna be with me, always.
I meant all that I said.
I don't wanna just for this stupid person or situation just to give up on you,
So it's good. She is, his lack of communication is hindering. He could easily say something like, he said, I did mean those things, but he could reach out to her, put his hand on her shoulder and say, I meant all those things and I still do. I think that's what she's looking for. I think so this is good. She's going to the core of all of it. When she sees the Legoland thing, underneath the anger and the accusations is sadness and longing and hope and worries. And when she exhibits that, it gives him a chance to respond in a way that actually soothes her, instead of, when she's yelling at him about Legoland, what's he supposed to say? It's hard to respond in a way that it doesn't usually provoke the kind of response you're looking for someone when you're accusing someone of lying, when they're like, I didn't lie to you, I forgot that we went to Legoland.
I love you. A lot.
I love you too.
I don't want to lose you. I need you.
So on one hand, this is very healthy. I love you. I'm crying. I don't want to lose you. This is the basis of, I think, all of Jasmine's anger that she's exhibited, and she's being more vulnerable right now, which is functional. Of course, this interaction, if she had seen the Legoland thing and been like, and then like, oh my God, does this mean you've lied to me? Does this mean I'm going to lose you? I don't want to lose you. And if she did that right from the beginning, then they would have hugged it out and it would have been a lot better situation. It's hard to do that in situations, but if she would have, but she eventually got there. And that's always been my thing with Jasmine, is that she, throughout this season, has shown that she will exhibit high reactivity in the moment, but recover pretty quickly. So that is a strength, right? It's still a stress in the moment, but the fact that she can recover, because a lot of Jasmines of the world will never get to this point. They'll never cry. Think of other people on the show. Darcy, for example. I don't know, but I imagine for Darcy, underneath a lot of her behaviors is this vulnerable, fragile human being that all of us have on the inside, which is, I don't want to lose you, and I love you, and I worry that you're going to leave me. So on one hand, she's being very functional, very healthy. On the other hand, she's exhibiting this need. So when, of course, it's functional and healthy and normal to need your partner, to need them for emotional support, to need them for financial support, to need them to pick up the kids from school, to need them in a variety of ways, emotionally, most importantly, perhaps. And that's, of course, functional, and there's nothing wrong, and there's really quite something healthy about saying that, acknowledging that, and it's also, it does provoke a love response in other people. If you can say to someone, I depend on you, I really need you, because it's true, the other person goes, oh, wow, like it really provokes a meaningful response in the other person, usually. And it really goes for a lot of relationships, friendships, a professor. If you come to a professor, it's like, I need you. I don't know what I'd do without you. It can really help. On the other hand, what it can be expressing is a desperation for Jasmine based on her relational traumas, that she not only loves him in a romantic way, a companionship way, an adult to an adult way, but she might need him in the dependency way that is perhaps not functional or helpful in a romantic relationship, where you depend too much on the other person for validation, for selfhood, to define who you are, to define what you want, to give you self-esteem. A little bit of that is absolutely functional and normal and healthy and human. A good amount of that is normal and human. But when it goes too far, then it can create a lot of strain, where the person can't really function emotionally without the other person. They don't really know who they are. They can't. And when there's conflicts, it can be very complicated, because for the person who doesn't have a self, who doesn't have a connection with the self, and doesn't have the self-esteem to say, I need you a little bit for sure, but I'm okay on my own. Without that ability, then under conflict, the person who is overly dependent doesn't know what to do under conflict, because on one hand, they can't separate, and they can't imagine a situation, even temporarily, where they're separate from the other person. This is what we call undifferentiation or fusion. And when you're like that, it provokes you to give in on things that you wouldn't give in on otherwise, and it provokes you to resent the crap out of this relationship, because it feels bad. It feels very confining. So it can create a lot of internal issues that can stand in the way of just being happy, but also with a relationship. So I think we definitely have seen some signs of that with Jasmine, but it's unclear.
Has become my best friend, like my support system. And I love him from bald head to toe, just the way he is, weird, creepy sometimes, but I also know the sweet, intelligent version of Gino.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best you can really ask for, right? A lid for every pot. I love him from bald head to toe, weird, creepy sometimes. So, I mean, they seem like they're a perfect couple.
I'm sorry if my actions, my words, everything from me hurt you.
Apology accepted.
And I forgive your stupidity, for the messages and all that, because that was stupid, babe.
Yes. I know. Sorry about that.
Okay, again, I'm always like, elaboration, Gino, put some other words in there, but I think he's sincere, I think she's sincere, and I think that's the main issue, for both of them to feel a sincere apology and care from the other person. Because, a big part of apologies, if I haven't said this before, is the notion that I care. I feel like in today's world, on the internet and news and stuff, apologies are just things you're supposed to say the right things. There's a lot of scrutiny around what you're supposed to say in an apology, and the core of an apology is I care. I'm sorry, and I care. I'm sorry, I care about your feelings. I care about what I did. I'm looking at it. It matters to me. You matter to me. I'm sorry, and you matter to me. So I think that is being exhibited right now between the two of them in terms of their vibe. They're not saying it directly. Or she is. Another concern I have about their relationship is she does all the talking. I mean, she said, I'm sorry. And then he says, apology accepted. And then he says, and I forgive you, meaning, in lieu of you apologizing as well, I'm just going to go ahead and say I forgive you. And then he says, yeah, totally. Yeah, that was wrong of me. So that can work for sure. It doesn't mean it's going to be dysfunctional. And in relationships, there can sometimes be a verbal person and a less verbal person. There's nothing wrong with that. But it can put a tremendous amount of strain on the Jasmines of the world to do all the talking.
So no more crazy exes, no more nothing. Just you and me.
Yeah, well, there won't be any crazy exes if I'm with you.
You don't want me as an ex, trust me.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm a nice girl. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I know she's just kidding, but in lieu of some of the things she said before, that is a little ominous. I don't think Jasmine would do anything horrible if they did break up to him, but I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't temporarily, in an emotional spike, do something. I can't remember what did she say earlier in the season. There was something along the lines of her saying that was kind of ominous, kind of controlling. Would she be like Danielle and stalk him? I don't know. Probably not. I think Jasmine has those impulses, but I think she's wise enough and mature enough not to act on those, I think.
I'm just kidding. So can we start like fresh new?
yeah.
Good. I would hope that they would have a conversation about his phone, about his ex, and what kind of information, because there's going to be other details. If they don't change anything, and this is something that I'm often frustrated with, is, okay, you made up, that's great, but it's going to happen again. The notion of Gino's exes is going to emerge, particularly if they get married and they start to intertwine their possessions. She starts looking at things like, is that from her? We know that she's capable of that. And he's prone to lying, and he probably has lied about other kinds of things or obscured other things in all likelihood. I don't know. But I would hope that they would talk about, okay, what are we going to do when this happens in the future? How are we going to manage that? What are the principles that we follow here? And I worry for them if they don't develop that.
After all the ups and downs and all the pain I caused Jasmine, honestly, I didn't think we were going to make it. But I was just very happy that she gave me a chance.
Well, this is a side of Gino that we don't normally see, which is encouraging. That this shows he cares, this shows he's capable of expressing and connecting with his vulnerability, his remorse, his, sorrow around what he did, the admission of what he did. So, and how much he really wants to be with her. So, that's another good sign. And, it warms the heart.
I'm glad she gave me a chance.
I didn't think that Gino would make me cry this season, but he is. I mean, because we haven't seen this side of Gino, and it always just makes me wonder, like, did the producers purposely withhold this kind of material from us until the very end? Because anyway, but yeah, I mean that you see the vulnerability and the desperation there and the humanness there that we don't often see, or at least that they don't show us. So that's a great sign that he can do that, and that he cares, and he feels the weight of what he did, and I think the shame of what he did. All right, well, if you haven't become a patron of the podcast yet, you can do so now by clicking the link below. Becoming a patron is the main way in which we can continue to do this sort of thing. when people become a patron of the podcast and contribute monthly, it literally gives me the ability to spend time on this sort of thing and not have to spend time on other job things, other ways to pay my bills. And thank you all for becoming a patron if you already are. And if you can become an upper tier patron and or an annual patron, that helps me out. You also get a discount if you're an annual patron, from what I understand. Anyway, only if you can afford it and only if you're cool with that. Either way, take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.